Self-preservation is a human instinct we all share in common and is one that is deeply ingrained in our psyche. This can be seen in countless tales throughout history, although the story I will recount for you today is one of extreme self-sacrifice, something that has happened far and few in between on this scale in our history books. The story is about an entire village coming together and risking their lives for the greater good. The unprecedented self-quarantine of the Eyam village people. The town in question is an ancient one, with evidence of mining during the Roman era and settlements even predating this. It's located roughly 200 kilometers north of London in the UK. Today, the town boasts a population of around 900 people. Our grim account begins in the fall of September in 1665. George Vicars, a tailor's assistant in Eyam, was going about his daily routine. He began unfolding blankets from London, who unbeknownst to him was infested with bubonic flies. The bubonic plague had recently broken out in the capital in the latest wave of a century-long pandemic that swept through Europe and the Middle East. Within the week, George began showing symptoms of the plague and ultimately died. Panic set in quickly in this small town of 350 people, as 6 weeks after George's death, another 29 Eyam residents had died from this terrible disease. The parish struggled through the winter, but the number of dead seemed to be dropping, and in May there were no deaths at all. Thankfully, the villagers believed the outbreak was over, but the disease, however, had other plans. It had quietly mutated during these cold months. The disease had become pulmonary, and therefore humans were now able to pass this disease along to one another. As the summer rolled around, the plague made a blistering return. By June 1666, Eyam's newly arrived pastor, William, realized the need to contain because Eyam lay on an important trade route between Sheffield and Manchester. If the plague got into those cities, tens of thousands would die, and so he began to formulate a quarantine plan. But this was England in the wake of a religious civil war, and so Eyam's residents were skeptical of their new priest and remained loyal to his predecessor, who was living in retirement on the edge of the village. Fortunately, William was able to persuade Stanley of his plan, and despite their religious differences, they called a meeting in the parish church and appealed the crowd to voluntarily isolate the village. This was all while they knew they faced almost certain death if they remained, but could also cause the death of thousands if they left. Amazingly, the residents of Eyam heroically agreed to stay. Although during this time and age the understanding of the disease was very rudimentary, they came together and incorporated a very modern plan. A quarantine cordon was established with a 1-mile radius marked by a ring of stones with nobody allowed to exit or enter this barrier. Amazingly, a total of 14 months passed before anybody went in and out of the village crossing this border. During its seclusion, Eyam suffered tremendously. Bodies piled up and families were instructed to bury their own dead on the outskirts of town. One woman, Elizabeth Hancock, buried 6 of her children and her husband inside 1 month. The pastor described the village in one of his letters as follows: "My ears have never heard such doleful lamentations. My nose has never smelt such noisome smells, and my eyes have never beheld such ghastly spectacles." His wife, Catherine, died on August 25th, 1666. The town, he said, was a Golgotha, a place of skulls. In order to survive, the town relied on food that was left at the boundary stone by neighboring townspeople. Trade was even able to continue as specific areas were designated as drop-off locations. People would exchange gold coins submerged in vinegar, which the villagers believed would disinfect them. Grimly enough, the townspeople did not run out of money, as they collected and used their dead neighbors' remaining money in order to survive. Measures were taken within Eyam to limit cross-infection. Sermons were held outside, bodies were no longer wheeled through the streets, and some villagers left their homes to camp on the surrounding hills. In all, 260 of Eyam's estimated 350 residents perished during this quarantine, roughly 75% of their population. This was more than double of the mortality rate of the Great Plague of London. But for all this, the villagers and the pastor's self-sacrifice had worked. The plague never made it over to nearby towns, And 14 months later, in November of 1667, the quarantine was lifted and the residents allowed to leave. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed and hope to see you in the next one.